Hey guys, Scripted here with another video, and this is pertaining to what I would consider sort of revisionist history about how the Star Wars fandom reacted to the different films. And I think there's sort of like some base level logic as to why a lot of this stuff is revisionist history coming out of the side of the fans that are pro Disney Star Wars, trying to sort of act as if the fandom has just always been divided. So let's take a look at Jacob here. I'm going to go through some of his comments with another YouTube, Anthony Gramuglia. He was on his pod or his show a couple days ago, I think, or a week and a half ago. He was on his show and he was making these kinds of comments. I just want to kind of go through it and just sort of either rebut or agree. I guess we'll see here.
Well, in 2023, I was like, I really want to start talking about Star Wars online because there's so many people talking about like what they dislike about it. That's fine. If you don't like everything new, that's totally cool with me. The cool thing about Star Wars, and we talked about this even before stream, Anthony, is, and again, I'm not the first person to say this, someone's least favorite Star Wars project is someone else's favorite. You know, like I have a friend who loves The Phantom Menace, loves Attack of the Clones. I have friends who hate Rise of Skywalker. I really like that movie, even though I know it's a controversial pick. And, you know, I think it's cool, because I think that what's made the series partially so iconic is that the fandom has never really entirely been unified on one thing.
See, this is one of the things these guys do is, so on the one hand, he says that there was just a lot of negativity online. So there was a lot of negativity online about the new stuff. Okay. So that means that there's a lot of people that don't like it. It's not as if this is a 50-50 sum game. Because if it was, he would have said, well, you know, there was some negativity online. He goes on further after this to talk about just how negative it is, and it's like, well, if it's super duper negative, it's probably because the majority of people are not happy. So it's not really a divide. It's more of there's a smaller group of people over here that are positive than the larger group over here that is negative. I don't know. I just don't see how he can say those two things at the same time.
If you go back in time, and you have an excellent video on this that I want to shout out, to where it's like, you kind of look at the reception to Rise of Skywalker, and you're like, Star Wars is ruined forever.
Yeah.
And then you go back in time, and it's just like, Star Wars is ruined forever. And I think it's just a great kind of encapsulation of how people have always felt.
Have people always felt that way, though? Because what I'm learning today from going through a lot of this stuff is that most of the talk about, say, Empire Strikes Back being divisive to fans, or some fans didn't like it, is stemming from very new commentary. Most of it is stemming from 2017 after The Last Jedi came out. That's when this whole notion came to be, and mainstream was talking about it.
The initial response to The Empire Strikes Back is eerily similar to that of 2017's Episode 8, The Last Jedi.
See, I find that funny, right? Because it's like, you go on the forums and everyone's like, no, it wasn't divisive at all. Like, the critics gave it mixed reviews, but nobody was negative on it. Like, really. If there was, it was very, very, very few and far between. But here's the critical hit, December 21st, 2017. So this is right when The Last Jedi comes out, and we're going to write an article about how the fans' reaction was mixed, to say the least, about Empire. And then you got another forum where people are like, the idea that Empire Strikes Back was divisive and poorly received as The Last Jedi upon release is pure myth. So the mainstream media sites are the ones that are sort of pushing this agenda. And the thing that you have to understand about this too is, Jacob and his buddy, they're acting like the fans were always divisive, they were always divided, I should say. That doesn't make sense logically, because Star Wars made a ton of money. It was extraordinarily popular, like the first Star Wars. So if you're going to say it was always mixed, it certainly wasn't mixed for the original. I don't think it was mixed for Empire either. I think there was maybe a handful of a percentage of people that weren't super thrilled with the tone change of it, because it was darker film. But that was a very tiny, tiny minority of people. And the thing is if those movies were dividing fans, or the fans' reaction was super duper mixed, and there was lots of negative and positive, why were they so popular? Why were they so popular? Like, you have to logically think, and you can literally see the decline with Disney Star Wars. Force Awakens makes about $500 million. Last Jedi makes what, like 180 or something? Rise of Skywalker makes nada. Not a dime. Then they did their Disney Plus stuff. Mando was popular, right, for a couple of seasons. Then that series tanked. Ahsoka, the ratings weren't very good. Acolyte tanked. Skeleton Crew was tanking, never had much viewership. Like, all of these shows, the only one that people point to is Andor, but even Andor lost the money, even though Andor is probably somewhat popular, I would argue. Maybe there's like a 50-50 split there, but it didn't make them any money because it cost them $600 million. There's no possible way they made that back with Disney Plus subscriptions. So it's so illogical to make the claim that it's always been this way. And again, a lot of this started in 2017.
Both middle chapters of their respective trilogies tried to take the Star Wars franchise in exciting new directions, and both received mixed reviews from fans who were initially displeased with the wide gap between their expectations and the film itself. Many fans slammed The Last Jedi for its diversity in addition to critiquing the coherence of its plot. There were similar complaints about the story not being coherent or compelling about The Empire Strikes Back.
Anyone remember that? Let me know in the comments. That people thought The Empire Strikes Back was not a cohesive story? Really? Anybody? So, this is pure cope for these mainstream media people and these people that are trying to say that their love for The Last Jedi is equivalent to the fact that there were the same amount of people, or it's equivalent to the fact that there were people that didn't like Empire. It's not even in the same hemisphere. And no one said the story in Empire was incoherent. That's the most dumb thing I've ever heard.
The Last Jedi writer and director, Rian Johnson, admitted that even he himself was initially disappointed with Empire, which was actually the first Star Wars movie he remembered seeing. However, he eventually came to his senses, saying that after watching and loving Return of the Jedi, he wound up warming to Empire. In fact, it gradually became his favorite of the trilogy.
That sounds like pure garbage to me. That sounds like a guy who saw the fan reaction to his crappy movie and then just made something up. Like, I'm not saying it's not possible that some people liked Empire more after Jedi. I'm not debating that at all. In fact, that's very possible, especially when it came to the Luke-Vader relationship, of course. Jedi enhanced the Luke-Vader relationship from Empire. But Rian Johnson's one guy. Assuming what he said here is true, I think it's a lot of it just putting on a show because his movie sucked. But he's one guy. Like, that was not a normal perspective of The Empire Strikes Back at all. People loved it. People were kind of sad that Vader was Luke's father, but that wasn't like, we don't like the movie, or we think it's incoherent, or we think it's awful like people do with The Last Jedi. That was just it was a shocking moment for people in the theaters. People were like stunned, like totally and completely stunned. And so there were people that initially were like, holy smokes, what the heck was that? That's what they decided to do here. But nobody was like, but that's a horrible movie. Nobody said that. So this whole revisionist history thing about the OT somehow had these same issues. When it made money and it made Star Wars more popular and it sold tons of toys and everybody loved it, and the Disney stuff went the opposite route. They've destroyed their toy lines. None of their shows make any money. Like, what are you talking about? And the sequel trilogy, for all intents and purposes, made very little money. For 3 episodic Star Wars movies to make a total of about, $675,000 to $700,000 profit or $700 million, excuse me, is not very good. It's just not. It's these Star Wars movies. Look at the originals and how much money they made with inflation, and it's not even in the same hemisphere. So this idea that it's always been divided is so nonsensical and illogical. Even if you just take sort of basic logic. Now, if Rian Johnson wanted to say that the prequel trilogy divided fans, sure, absolutely. It definitely did. There were definitely people who did not like the prequel trilogy. 100%. There's no way around it. But the idea that I'm going to sit here and believe that the amount of people that hated the prequels is percentage-wise the same as the amount of people that hated the sequels, I'm sorry, but I don't buy that whatsoever. And just like Jacob said, you type in Star Wars or you go online and it's all negative. So there you go. With the prequels, there was negative and positive. It definitely split people. I would say probably 50-50. But Disney Star Wars, it's like 90-10 don't like it. You know what I mean? Like 10% like it. That's literally what it is. And Jacob knows that because he's going online and he's saying that it's all negative, all negative.
But I think that because you have so many different people with so many different opinions, it makes for so many interesting points for discussion about the series, you know? And in my opinion, yes, I'm not afraid to talk about what I dislike. And I want to be a little bit more transparent about that into the future. But...
Well, I guess you're not now, but you kind of have been. If you're saying that you have negative perspectives and you haven't shared them, but you haven't been afraid to share them, I don't understand how that works, because it's like constant, everything is great. Like, I mean, before you blocked me on Twitter, I'd see your tweets and be like, bro, like, do you ever think about, like, remember, you blocked me because I said, I would ask you why. Like, you would post something, this is one of the greatest scenes of a space battle in the history of Star Wars. And that would be it. There'd be no commentary at all. And then I'd say, why? That's, like explain what's so great about it. Right? You can't just say everything's great and not explain why it's great. Just like I can't say everything's bad and not explain why it's bad. I explain why it's bad in detail in my reviews. So that's the issue. Is you kind of have been afraid to say what you didn't like because I think you did want to kind of be the juxtaposed guy. It's kind of part of your online identity, right? Is you're the ultra everything's positive guy in the sea of negativity. And that's fine, you can do that, but that comes with not speaking negatively, which you pretty much don't. So it's like no, I think it is, you have been afraid to, because you know that goes against your persona, and you've said so many positive things that if you turn around now, like, what are you going to say that's negative that you haven't already said that is positive, right? Like, it's too much now. So that's kind of not really true, dude.
You know, like, I would much rather talk about the things that I appreciate, because if you type in Star Wars online, there's just a wave of negativity.
Proving my point. Exactly. And you want to be the positive guy. Like, that's part of your persona, an online persona. But again, that just logically jives with the fact that Disney Star Wars has not just divided the fandom, it has changed Star Wars from having a positive outlook for most people. Certainly there's some prequel haters, don't get me wrong, but for most people, to a just totally negative. Like, it's mostly negative. And so that's cool if you want to be the guy who's just going to be positive about everything. I don't care. Do what you want, man. That's your thing. But you're confirming that it hasn't always been this way with what you're saying. So, I mean, again, logically, you can't justify and say that, well, people hated what George did the same way they hate what Rian Johnson or what J.J. Abrams did. It's like, no, dude. It's way worse now. Way worse.
And unfortunately, I feel like because there's been so much like toxicity within the fandom, and I try to stray away from those terms now, but there's really just so much like hate that isn't even directed at Star Wars primarily, but rather anything new in the series, the cast, the crew, the fans of all the new stuff.
Now, he is right there. There is a lot of like attacking people and getting personal. I think, and I've talked about Jacob before, do what you want to do, dude. I just want to know the reasons why. I just want to know why. And the thing is the people on the positive end, they attack the negatives too. I did videos about those guys Choco or whatever his name is and his buddy, and they do whole hour-long podcasts where they're talking about how crappy the fans are because they don't like stuff. They're bigots even and racists and stuff. They do whole shows about this. And all I'm asking is if I'm going to give you if I'm going to give my opinions the dignity of explaining why I have those opinions in detail, all I ask is that the guys on your side, Jacob, and you give your opinions the dignity of explaining what's so great about them in detail. Like, it seems like most positive reviews I see, and there are not very many of these shows and stuff, they just say how great everything is. They don't explain why it's great. They don't get into the details at all. They just kind of, it's great, woo, Disney. And so for us, it feels like it's not authentic, and it feels like the shill accounts are just shilling because they want to get free merch and they want to get access, and it feels dishonest because they're not giving details, right? About what is so stinking great about it. So then it just feels like an ad. Like, if I watch Star Wars Explained, most of the time it just feels like an ad for Star Wars. It doesn't feel like they're being objective. It feels like they're just saying great things, and then they get their free stuff in the mail, and then they get to go visit Lucasfilm and meet Dave Filoni, and that's fine if they want to do that. But people on the other side are going to be like, and who are in the majority are going to be like, this is not authentic because you're not explaining why you feel the way that you feel. You're just saying you do because you do. That doesn't work for people. Okay, that's the issue, and that's why I can appreciate people that don't like the prequels, for example, because there are a lot of videos where guys fully explain the reasons they don't like it. Now, obviously, there's exaggerated reviews like Plinkett and stuff that are just hilarious, and some of the stuff they say is obviously hyperbolic, and they but that's part of his shtick, right? He's making these funny videos, so he's exaggerating, he's nitpicking to the absolute utter extreme. But there are portions of those reviews even too where there are legitimate concerns there, and he lays it out, so you're not like, oh, he just hates it because he hates it. No, it's like, no, he explains it. He explains the problems, and, that's what they are. And so you can say, well, I can either accept these problems or not accept these problems, right? I can either see that and go, whoa, man, my opinion just changed of the prequels. They're garbage. Or I can say, well, some of those things they brought up are true. I don't really like them either. I still like the movies overall. And that's kind of my opinion. I consider them totally satisfactory to the story, but there are details within them that are not very well done.
To where it just became, like, really depressing logging on every day and seeing that. So I was like, I don't want to be that guy. I want to be somebody different who just, like, you go to his account and it's things that he enjoys about Star Wars and wants to talk about it, and he's not hating on everything that's new before it comes out. And
it's not that you don't say you hate things, it's that you say you love it all. Everything is amazing. And he just confirmed what I said, right? This is his persona. He wanted to be the positive guy in the sea of negative guys. Which, again, I don't know how honest he's being there. I personally can't fathom how you could not have criticisms of Disney Star Wars. Like, I just can't fathom that because, again, I go through them and I logically look at it and I just go, this is full of problems. So it feels disingenuous, and that's where the term shill came from, because we're like, there's no way that you actually believe that just everything they did was awesome. Like, there's no possible way that you liked what they did with Luke Skywalker if you were a fan of Star Wars. How could you possibly like that? And if you did, I want to know why. I want to know why that you would like that Luke Skywalker had a thought, as fleeting as it might have been, even for a second, about killing his nephew. Which then, all the visions he saw of his nephew before he thought about killing him came true because he thought about killing him. So he essentially made him that way. Like, by being an idiot and not being himself. So again, I just need explanations, dude. Like, if you really love that, do a video about what is so great about it. And then you won't get the toxicity and the comments and the shill and you're this and you're that. You won't have to block everybody. Just explain. And listen, if you can explain it, then whatever. Then it's like, hey, I totally disagree with you, but whatever. That I guess that's your perspective, and okay. But we don't get a lot of that. It's just a lot of what is basically advertisements for Disney Star Wars. That's what it feels like when people watch your videos, dude. It really does. And even Star Wars Explained, as much as they are ads as well, most of them, they at least do get into it sometimes and do give explanations as to why they think the way that they think. They're not always satisfactory to me, but at least they do that. But most of these shill accounts don't do that. You don't do that. It's just positive, 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 without any details or explanation.
All of that. He's remaining optimistic, because I think that being a fan is thing with a franchise, even if you recognize there's an installment that isn't for you. You know?
It's fair. It's fair.
The reality of it is that what Disney has been producing hasn't been for fans. Like, Rian Johnson even said that. He literally said, you don't make a movie for fans, you make a movie for yourself. When he was making The Last Jedi. That's what he said. So they don't care about fans. It's all messaging and their ideas and their ideals and them trying to influence people to think the way that they do. That's what that is. That's what Disney Star Wars has been for a while. I'm perfectly happy to be positive about Mando season 1 and 2. They're not spectacular, but they're okay. They're not bad. Not bad. Of course, it just flew off the handle after that and became the Bo-Katan show, and I don't even know what the point of Mando even being there was, whatever, but so there is a sliver of positivity in Disney Star Wars, but they haven't made stuff for fans, so I'm not required to say, well, because I don't mind Mando season 1 and 2, that therefore I'm still a fan of Disney Star Wars. No, it has been, almost all of it has been quite awful. So that's the thing. So you can't just say, well, one installment. And since Mando season 2, it has been just a plethora of garbage has come out. There really hasn't been anything good at all. Other than, I guess, people, it's probably like a 50-50 Andor like. But everything else, people just are not happy at all. Now, one thing I will agree with him on, too, is I do think people get really, really angry. And ultimately, it is entertainment. That's why a lot of my videos are lighthearted and stuff. I don't like scream and yell and rant and rave. Because it's not really worth it at this point. There's no reason to care about it enough to do that, because they've pretty much ruined it. So I do agree there that people take it too far, and I think personal attacks go too far as well. I think you need to stay with the reasoning and logic and objective analysis. And I think that's what I did here today. Jacob, cool, man. Be the super positive guy, whether you really believe it or not, because I don't know. I don't know how authentic it is when you're literally telling me in this interview or this podcast that you made the decision to be ultra positive because everybody else was ultra negative. It's like I said in my other video about you, dude, just be yourself. Don't base what you're doing on what other people are doing. As soon as you go down that road, and there's a lot of Star Wars social media people that do that, and really they just alienate people. They literally just are alienating people because they are basing all of the things that they tweet or all of the things that they do videos on other people instead of just being themselves and telling people what they really think. And it's easy to pick out people when they're being inauthentic. It's very easy. So, that's my rant. Jacob, why are you still blocking me on Twitter, dude? I've never hurt your feelings. All I want you to do is explain your points. That's it. Anyways, guys, let me know in the comment section what you think. If you like this content, please like, subscribe. Always helps the channel. Feel free to check anything else on my channel. Have yourselves a really good day.